Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to announce that smooth sack summer is officially upon us. When you're playing in the summer sun, make sure you're groomed from pubes to bum. Thanks to our friends at Manscaped, you can make this season your smoothest yet. The Performance Package 5.0 Ultra is the ultimate bundle to keep your boys downstairs cool while looking hot. Join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. Get 20% off plus free shipping when you go to manscaped.com and use code THPN summertime, and the trim is easy. The Manscaped Performance Package 5.0 Ultra has everything you need to prepare that summer bod. Every man knows how scary it can get when going for a close shave below the belt. That's why I trust Manscaped them for all my sensitive areas. Inside this package, you'll find the star of the show, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. Their 5th generation trimmer features 2 interchangeable, next-gen skin-safe blade heads, a standard one for taking a little off the top, and a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. We'd also have dual LED spotlights to provide contrast on multiple skin tones, 3 length setting combs, and oh, did I mention this trimmer is waterproof too. Beach, lake, or shower, this razor will devour even the strongest pubes. Now that you have the perfect haircut, use Manscaped's liquid formulations to keep that freshness even at the hottest summer BBQs. The Crop Soother Aftershave Lotion and Crop Preserver Anti-Chafe Ball Deodorant. Once they touch your sack, it will never go back. Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts to their Performance Package 5.0. The Manscaped Boxers and a Shed Travel Bag. More what products? Say no more. Manscaped's new Buff Bundle is all you need to keep the summer heat a breeze. This bundle includes their signature silicone scrubber plus body wash. Ditch your nasty loofah and grab a taste of freshness. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code THPN at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code THPN at manscaped.com. It's smooth sack summer, boys. Get on board or get left behind.
Episode 81 of the Habs Culture podcast. My name is Justin Schwartz, and I'm alongside Liam Baum. We have a massive episode today, absolutely massive. The last couple weeks, or I'd say even the last few days in hockey, last week or so, have been insane. Just to give you a little bit of a recap, we are July 2nd today, the day after Canada Day. And if we back this up, about a week ago, Monday, is when the Florida Panthers beat the Edmonton Oilers in 7 games at home. And that was shortly followed by an NHL award ceremony, which was also shortly followed by the NHL Draft, which was then shortly followed by NHL free agency July 1st, yesterday, Monday. Liam, it's nice to be with you. It's nice to talk hockey. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. Not a lot of Montreal Canadiens things to talk about, but there are a couple notable things. Let's start it off with that. The Canadiens on the 28th of June, 5th overall, a ton of speculation, end up picking the guy that we wanted right in their wheelhouse, Ivan Demidov at 5th overall. Fast forward a couple days to July 1st, free agency opens. The Canadiens are not active. However, they do give Uri Slafkovsky, the 20-year-old, an 8-year, $7.6 million deal. Put those two things together, Liam. Give me your Montreal Canadiens offseason moves rated 1 to 10 so far.
Right off the bat, I'll give you a 9 out of 10. I think that draft couldn't have gone better just in terms of those first 2 rounds, I want to say. And then 3 to 7 harder to predict, but I think all around it was a good draft. And then free agency, I think the best move we made, or the Canadiens, I should say, was not making any moves. We didn't overpay anybody, and I think that's the best case scenario. We're not looking to win right now. We're not going to be a cup contender. And I think the best solution was just staying put, keeping the salary cap or the salary that we have. And I guess Gordon and Hughes made the right move to re-sign Slafkovsky. So that was an amazing contract as well. So overall, very happy. I'm sure you can say pretty much the same.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we got the guy that we, the fans, wanted at 5th overall. debatably the second most talented player in the draft. We went over that at nauseum. But it's exciting. I feel like we just acquired or just drafted a guy that now automatically becomes one of the players with the most upside in the Montreal Canadiens system, right? More upside than a guy like Suzuki, more upside than a guy like Slavkovsky, more upside than a guy like Caulfield. Obviously, it could be debated amongst many people, but there's no doubt that Ivan Demidov lacks any skill. I mean, it's just incredible to have that type of guy in your pipeline and to know that once he returns, once his contract expires in Russia after next season, he will most likely be a Montreal Canadien come the 2025-26 season. So that is super exciting. And on the Slavkovsky front, I think it's a great deal. I think it's obviously, you're betting on him outperforming last year and consistently getting better, but with the salary cap going up, right? The percentage that he of his contract against the cap will continuously go down slowly. So right now, I think he's sitting at about 8.5%. And if my calculations are correct, by the time, in 2 years from now, when the cap might go up $7-8 million, we might be seeing Juraj Slavkovsky's contract count for even a little bit less than 8% against the cap. So that's exciting. I think that contract will be a bargain. What do you have to say about that?
For sure. I love this, if you want to call, pay scale that Hughes has created in this system where nobody makes more than Suzuki at this moment. And I'm sure there will come a time where someone will make more, but at this moment, all our best players are locked up to contracts that are less than $8 million. And I think that's amazing if we're trying to compete in a few years. Look at teams like Toronto, teams like Edmonton that are also top heavy. They just can't get it done because they have no depth. So having all these cheaper salaries leaves us room to get those depth guys and make those pushes for deep playoff runs and have those depth pieces. So very, very happy with that contract. Obviously, it's very early still in Slavkovsky's career. This contract was earned based off his development in this past season. And assuming it continues to increase, this contract is going to be an absolute bargain. And I'm very glad we got that done this season. He's still on his entry-level deal this coming year. And then I believe the year after that, that's when the contract kicks in. But very happy overall.
And just to kind of put you on the spot here with a quick question. Let's say Slavkovsky in his career or in the next 5 years caps out at about 75 points in 82 games, so just under point per game. Is this contract still worth it in your opinion?
100%. I think it's still worth it if he's a 60-point guy. In 4 years, the salary cap's going to go up like 10 million. So like you talked about before, if his contract is worth 7% of the cap, that's what a 60, 65, 70-point player is going to be demanding in free agency, if not more. And Slavkovsky is that unicorn build, big guy, power forward. Every team needs him on a cup contending team. So I think that's very much worth it, even if he's a 75-point player and that's his ceiling.
There's no doubt about that. And just to kind of put it in perspective, obviously different builds, but I want to just highlight someone that got a contract today, not a UFA at the moment, but signed an extension with the St. Louis Blues, and that is Pavel Buchnevich, who signed, if I'm not mistaken, 8 times 8. Or no, it wasn't 8. It was 6 times 8, correct? Thank you. So 6 years at $8 million a year. And again, the reason that I like to highlight that is just because obviously there's been points in his career, Buchnevich, where he's been a little bit over point per game, never in an 82-game season, but in those 60, 70 game sample sizes a couple seasons back during COVID and whatnot, he was over point per game, which was very, very impressive. But I think that, looking at how things are, if you look at Slavkovsky and he's a 20-year-old, and you could probably project that at some point in his career, he'll be a 75-point player at the very least, down the line. I think that if you're using this contract to compare the Buchnevich one, I think it fares pretty well for the Canadiens. So
for sure,
another masterclass by Hughes there. You get those 3 guys locked up for, if you want to combine it, for less than 30% of your cap, which is very impressive considering you look at a lot of other teams, whether it's the Leafs or the Sens or even Edmonton. I mean, these are teams that I just named 3 Canadian teams, funny enough, but these are 3 teams that are locking up their big stars for, big chunks of their cap percentage. So it's nice to see. Any notes on that, Liam? Or?
No, I think we covered that all. It's overall just a great deal for Slavkovsky, and yeah, definitely another W for Went Views.
There you go. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna highlight the draft a little bit, kind of look at winners, losers, teams that stayed the same, teams that severely lost, or teams that gained in a massive way. And yeah, so that will be it for today. We're gonna try and keep it under the 35-minute thresh mark for you guys. But let's start this off, Liam. I'm not even going to talk about number one in Macklin Celebrini. He looks good in a San Jose Sharks uniform. I'm not going to lie, but I feel like there's not many players that don't. It's one of the nicer logos in the league. Any notes on Macklin Celebrini going number one overall?
Well, you know what? I'm not going to talk about Celebrini. Let's talk about the Sharks just in general. Going out, able to get Sam Dickinson at 11. Obviously, they're adding Max Celebrini as well. This is going to be a lethal team. I didn't think Dickinson was going to slip that far, and I know we might be going one-for-one picks here and evaluating them, but the Sharks just got a lot better, and they added a few key guys in free agency. Obviously, they're not in a position to win right now, but in a few years, this core is going to be really, really good, I think, with Will Smith, Celebrini, Eklund, and Dickinson. Those are four top guys that could be top guys in the league. So very good on San Jose. I think they're one of the big winners of this draft.
Undoubtedly. I think that they're, if they're going to rebuild, if your team's going to rebuild, you got to do it the right way. And I think the Sharks are heading in that direction. They've offloaded big contracts. They're even taking on a few bigger contracts to probably meet the salary cap floor. And as a result, I mean, they definitely won't be competitive necessarily next year, but it'll be nice to see, their team grow slowly as they continue to add young talent into their lineup year after year. So definitely a winner of the draft is the San Jose Sharks. So that's the first thing to get off the list there. And number two, the Chicago Blackhawks take Artem Levshunov, followed by Sasha Boisvert at 18th overall, and then followed by, am I missing a pick here? Yes, Marek Vanacker at 27th overall. So 3 first-round picks for the Chicago Blackhawks this year. 2 last season for them with Bedard and Oliver Moore. They now have combined for 5 total first-round picks in the last 2 seasons. They are in a rebuild, but they somehow keep adding talent through free agency, which we'll talk about in our next episode. But Liam, give me your thoughts on Chicago and what they did in this year's draft.
I've been seeing a lot of heat on Chicago for taking Levshunov at number 2, but I think it's the right pick for them right now. They have Bedard. Obviously, it'd be amazing to add a top winger, whether that's Demidov or probably not number 2, or Lindstrom at number 2. But I think adding that top defenseman is pivotal for a team to be a cup contender in the future. He's going to be there for 15 years. Let's assume he doesn't get traded. So I think that's a good move by Chicago. I don't love Sasha Boisvert, and I'm not too familiar with Marek Vanacker, but from the rankings, he was a bit of a reach. So they probably did have a solid draft. I'm not too familiar with Vanacker, but adding a guy like Levshunov, you're always going to be, you're getting the best ranked defenseman in this draft. You're going to have a good grade overall. So I'll say it's a good start to their rebuild. They still got a long way to go. The free agency thing, again, we'll talk about in a bit, but they're building. I think they're still probably the weakest team in the league right now, though.
Yeah, undoubtedly. But again, moving in that right direction. That's for sure. Moving on. I'm not going to cover every team. Going to kind of cover the ones that are prominent and important and the ones that we think are interesting. But at number 3, the Anaheim Ducks, I will say go off the board because I think that we can both agree on that. Go off the board and take Beckett Sennecke.
Yeah.
The winger/center out of the OHL with the Oshawa Generals. Had a very slow start to his OHL season this past season, but came through in the back half, played very well in the playoffs. And Anaheim is taking, I will call it some sort of risk on Beckett Sennecke. Does he have a lot of upside? There's no doubt about that. But that is very, very, very risky, in my opinion, when you're drafting in the top 3. Your thoughts on Sennecke, Liam?
Yeah, this was a reach and a half. This guy was pretty much not ranked by anybody in the top 10. And Pat Verbeek, known for his random draft picks. McTavish was a bit of a reach, obviously a great player, but this one was pretty crazy. I think we were all surprised by it. Sennecke, whatever how you pronounce it. He was barely point per game in the OHL, correct? I
Yeah,
believe he played in the OHL.
just at about point per game.
Yeah. So, I mean, just in comparison, Berkeley Catton had double his points. So, to me, it's very interesting. He did have a very good playoff in juniors and did lead the league in points, but I don't know. This is banking on upside because I do think there's a lot of better players right now that do have higher potential than him. In terms of their second first round pick, Stian Solberg, this guy's a pure defensive defenseman. So they do have those offensive defensemen in their system, but adding a guy like this he was ranked very low. In the last like month, he shot his way up. I think he was ranked like 50th or something. Shot up all the way to a potential top 25 pick, which he did end up going. But again, two interesting picks for me. I don't know. Anaheim has a good core, and they're all very young, but two interesting picks, two reaches to me.
From what I understand, though, this Jan Solberg was honestly a solid pick from a lot of people around the league, or just Twitter and whatnot. That seems to be the consensus. The Sennecke one, like you mentioned, I mean, I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. It just seems like a huge reach. I think it is a huge reach. I think it's a low floor, high ceiling play, and it's questionable considering that in many people's opinions, he was probably, obviously below Celebrini, below Lindstrom, below Demidov, below Tej, below Berkeley Catton. So yeah, maybe in terms of, and again, you can't take every single, mock draft that you see online for what it is. But at the end of the day, I can't, to me, there's not enough proof in the pudding to select this guy at third overall. Like, again, if you told me that you were going to select him 8th to Seattle instead of where Berkeley Catton went, I would say, okay, there's top 10, you're still in a prime position to pick a top player. But if you want to shoot more for upside, then by all means, right? Like, that's what the Habs tried to do with KK. Clearly didn't work. That's what the Habs are doing with Slav, and that so far has taken a completely a 180 to what we see with KK. So you're going to get, you could see both sides of the spectrum, but I just think when you're picking third overall and there's so many other options on the board and you want to go forward in this case, which is also surprising in my opinion for Anaheim, it's just a little bit questionable.
And at the same time, why don't you just trade down at that point if you're taking a guy off the board? I really don't think Columbus, Montreal, and even Utah or Ottawa, I don't think any of those teams were looking at Sennecke like that. So very interesting to me. Let's move on. Let's skip Columbus. I feel like it was an obvious pick. It's Columbus, whatever. We'll go on to Montreal. We talked about it for a little bit. I just want to point out that Montreal was missing this top forward. We said it. Demidov has this 90 to 100 point upside comparable to Marner. He was that one piece that the Canadiens were missing. There's always different pieces you can add onto your team in terms of vets and guys who develop in your system. But this was the one position that the Canadiens were really lacking, the one forward that they were very much in need of for the last, I don't even know how many years. I want to say like 15 years. And they finally did it. Both of us were absolutely hyped because we really haven't experienced this. We haven't seen the Canadiens just go with the guy that's right there. And the Canadiens finally did it. So it was very nice to see. We have the decor. We have the goalie, if you want to say Jacob Fowler has that potential. They finally add that forward. So amazing for the Habs. And I think this was a home run of a pick. I didn't even think Demidov would still be there. So very happy to see that.
No, undoubtedly. I'll just like keep it straight up. It's like in the last 10, ever since I've been following hockey, which I would like to say is like probably just before like maybe late 2000s, like 09, maybe. Like I kind of started following hockey a little bit later, but I guess that's not later. I was 7 years old at that point. But nonetheless, my point is that like I don't think my parents. I'd go to sleepaway camp every year. Okay, and every time I'd go to sleepaway camp started mid-June. The draft was always late June, beginning of July. I swear, every year they would send me a letter in the mail saying who the Canadiens drafted with that first round pick. Sherback. Then you had Michael McCarron. Then you had I don't even like Noah Juleson. Like it was
There's
just
Bolia, Tenorti.
garbage. And it's like those guys weren't the consensus. And granted, the Canadiens were always picking those in the late first because they were always like somewhat mediocre and maybe made it to the first round of the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it's like none of those guys panned out. None of them.
No.
Michael McCarron's still playing in the NHL if you want to call that a success. But other than that, there was no smash spot picks other than Carey Price in 05. And then now in the later 2000s, we're starting to see Gouli and Mailloux and Hudson and Slav. Like these are guys that Owen Beck, Massar, these guys might pan out. We don't know yet. But it just seems like this brass is, and again, we were very quick. And I mean, I'm speaking for myself. Maybe I'm speaking for you as well. Like the Reinbacher pick was definitely questionable considering who was on the board, right? Ryan Letter, Matvei Michkov, those are guys we wanted. But with that being said, Reinbacher still has the potential to be an elite number 2 defenseman. And we just got debatably, like I said before, the second most talented player in the draft. So if this was the plan all along, then props to Ken Hughes and his brass because it's, I think that was a smart move. So look, we'll take that. We'll leave it at that. But it's nice to see them take the guy with skill, the guy that who put up 2 points per game in the KHL juniors. Like,
yeah,
it's ridiculous.
I just want to point out, I think Bobrov was a huge part of this pick, and the Canadiens are so lucky to have this guy in their system. I can finally understand the appreciation for him because he was the one that went to Russia, met with Demidov's
one of the few
family.
teams, by the way.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. We have that limited access because of Bobrov. And not only was Demidov wanting to come to the Habs, he was begging, and I quote, he was begging for this pressure, begging to come to the Canadiens. So it's great to see. And the Canadiens were known for having Russians on their team, and it stopped in the last few years since those guys like Markov, Emelin, Kostitsyn all kind of disappeared. But it's nice to see them finally go out and just get that skilled guy. So I think we leave it at that.
And I'm just going to take a minute here to shout out our sponsors at DraftKings.
Bet the action on the ice with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the app now and use code THPN. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on hockey. That's code THPN, only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. The crown is yours. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2023. All rights reserved.
Okay, Liam, so we've just reached the 5. We'll talk about Michael Haig in a second. We'll leave that for the back end of this episode because I think it's a very interesting story. I think he's a good player and want to get to that. If you want to intervene and talk about a certain pick, let me know. But I'm gonna kind of skip through them and then we'll talk about certain ones. But TJ Ginlett to the Utah Hockey Club, really like that pick. I think there's a lot of upside there with Tej. This is where it kind of gets interesting again because there's been one defenseman go off the board, and that was Artem Levshunov. There was so much speculation around Ziv Buium going in the top 5, let alone top 7. So there was that. A lot of people felt that guarantee that he was going to go top 7. He had a lot of hype around his name. Zane Parekh, Sam Dickinson, like Salayev, Carter Yakimchuk. Like these are all guys that people thought were going to go top 10. But to our surprise, the second defenseman off the board was Carter Yakimchuk, the right shot D out of the WHL with the Calgary Hitmen, put up 30 goals in the dub. What are your thoughts on that pick? Do you think it's a bad pick, or do you think it's a good pick, but they might have left some better options off the board?
Yeah, I think that's the route I'm gonna take. Look, honestly, he was probably one of the least defensemen I'm knowledgeable about. Great numbers, but Parekh had better numbers, so I don't understand that. And then Buium was ranked higher on almost every list. So, I mean, that's what we have access to. So that's how we form our opinions. But I don't know. I don't think it's a bad pick. But Ottawa is known for making bad picks. Like if we're going back, Tyler Boucher, I don't know what was going on there. But look, he's a top defenseman, clearly. Was ranked in the top 12, I want to say. So I don't think it's a bad pick. I don't think it's a great pick. They did need that defenseman, so at least they went with a D-man. Obviously, Chikrin's now gone, so he's a right shot defenseman, Yakimchuk. So he fits on that team well. So I'll say it's a good pick. Won't say it's a terrible pick.
We move on. Berkeley Cannon to the Seattle Kraken. We both liked him as maybe the 4th best forward in the draft.
I just want to add to that. Their center core is crazy. Beniers, Shane Wright, Catton. Someone's got to play on the wing.
Yeah, very true. And I think from what I understand, Berkeley Cannon is relatively versatile. So I think that helps the Kraken situation. But also a guy with like, I'll compare him. I think we've said this a couple times, but I'll compare him to kind of like last year's Zach Benson, where there's a lot of things to like, but for some reason he's always sitting in the shadow of some of the more elite players in the draft. But it wouldn't surprise me if he somehow. I mean, he's definitely going to go back to. He's definitely going to go back to his junior team most likely and play another season. But it also wouldn't completely surprise me if for some reason, he made team out of camp just like Zach Benson did last season. So anyway, we'll move on from that pick. 9th overall, Zane Parekh, 96 points in the dub. PB1 defenseman upside. A lot to like offensively. Don't really know if he's any good defensively, but what are your thoughts on Zane Parekh at 9?
I think that's the best pick Calgary could have made. I mean, I love Bouillon, but they needed that PP1 D man. They need that offensive guy. They have some great defensive players. So I think that's a perfect pick. I think he's going to fit in really well there. Seems like a very likable guy, and I definitely want this guy to succeed in the league.
Anton Salayev at 10 to the New Jersey Devils, which I think we can both agree is, I mean, again, I don't know very much about his game, but he's a 6'7" left shot D who plays the right side. And if we're just talking about team fit here, I mean, let's compare it. Let's look at this team, right? You got Dougie Hamilton. You drafted Simon Nemec back in 2022, 2nd overall. You have Luke Hughes. You still have Siegenthaler. I mean,
Seamus Casey also
correct.
In the system.
He was at Michigan U, who had an unbelievable season in college. I mean, now you're adding a 6'7" beast to an already. I mean, they're all relatively tall, especially Dougie Hamilton. So I mean, again, you're in that 10. You're literally at pick 10 where everything kind of breaks off, and you probably go with best player available / the guy that you like the best. And I feel like New Jersey kind of hit the nail on the head there with their pick with Anton Salayev.
Yeah, they didn't need an offensive defenseman. They've got Hughes, they've got Nemec, you got Dougie, you add a defensive defenseman who's probably insanely tough to play against, and he's probably not coming over for at least like 2-3 years. So they've got time to develop for him to develop, and he's going to be part of a sick D-core for a long, long time. I mean, I think that's up there with the Canadiens D-core in a few years as one of the best in the league.
Undoubtedly. And then we move on. Sam Dickinson, like we mentioned before, at 11 to the Sharks. Honestly, has the upside again. I feel like there's a lot of guys on this list defensively that have the upside to be the best defenseman in the draft. And I think it's going to be really interesting to monitor that throughout the next few years. But nonetheless, Sam Dickinson out of the OHL with the London Knights had a very, very good season with them. Zeev Bouillon at 12th overall to the Minnesota Wild. They swapped picks with the Philadelphia Flyers, who were originally picking at 12th. They trade down to that 13th overall pick, whereas the Minnesota Wild trade up to select Zeev Bouillon at 12th. They will add him to a D-core that already has Brock Faber, who was a Calder Trophy finalist for this past season. Zeev, Brock Faber. I think, Liam, I want to hear what you have to say. I don't know if you know much about Zeev Bouillon, but he had an unbelievable season at Denver. They won a title. He's a great defenseman, character-wise, but also in his hockey smarts, his hockey IQ. I think that if there's one player in this draft, maybe other than Macklin Celebrini right now, that's NHL ready, it's Zeev Bouillon.
I think you're right, and I think this could be considered as the steal of the draft. A lot of people had him going 3, and Minnesota gets him at 12. They needed a D-man. They get him. They've got a top 2 for the next 10, 15 years with him and Brock Faber. So great pick for them. Has an offensive game. Honestly, I think he's the second best defenseman in this draft, if not top 3. So Elite Prospects had him as the highest upside defender, had him as the best defender, I believe. So Minnesota got an absolute steal here.
At 13, Jet Luchenko to the Philadelphia Flyers. They clearly traded out of their original spot because, I guess they saw fit with that 13th overall pick, and they were going to get the guy that they wanted anyway, clearly here with Jet Luchenko. 14th overall to the Buffalo Sabres is Constantinius. And now I want to talk about this for a second.
Yeah.
I'm appalled because I don't understand what the Buffalo Sabres are doing. Constantinius is a good player. I'm not taking that away from him at all. I think that he's probably for the value at 14. He was sitting on a lot of people's boards in that 10 to 15 range, maybe even a little bit lower at, 8 to 15. But what I don't get is that they're constantly adding very similar players in terms of style. Yuri Kulich, Isaac Rosen. Now they add Constantinius. They have Zach Benson. They have Matt Savoy. Like, at what point are you going to say, hey, it might be favorable to add a defenseman, or hey, we might want to go a different route and take a player that complements Tage or complements some of the other guys that they have. Like, I can't wrap, or Alex Tuck, I just can't wrap my head around this pick. I mean, maybe you're taking best player available, but wouldn't in this case, like, I mean, I guess maybe if that was their guy, but I just don't really see where that pick ends up working out, really.
It seems like they just keep drafting and drafting and drafting and drafting, and they're never trading. It's just, let's just add another top talent in the draft and let's hope he pans out. Like, how many more drafts are you going to go until you just say, we need to trade our first round pick for a guy like Nietzsche? We need to trade a guy who's more NHL ready, because like you just said, they have Benson, they have Savoy, they have Oslin, they have Kulik, they have Rosen. Like, how many more years is it going to be until they just trade this pick for a guy who's ready and they can start contending? Because by the looks of this, mostly all these prospects aren't ready. They're not completely ready to play a pivotal role in the NHL. Yes, Peterka has finally become a reliable top 6 guy, but he's like really the only one. I don't think Benson is fully, he's obviously not at his top potential right now. And they're a team who needs to start winning, because it's been 13 seasons and they don't have a playoff appearance, and their core isn't getting any younger. Tage is, he broke out relatively late in his career. He's their best player. They have Alex Tuck, they have Dahlin, who are, they're not all old, and they're not an old team whatsoever, but it's time to just build that NHL roster up and go for some wins, because I feel like these fans are just going to be absolutely pissed off.
Yeah, I don't see the value in continuously drafting in that 10 to 15 range, similar players, guys that are we can talk all day about the value of internal competition, right? But at the end of the day, how many spots are available? There's only 6 spots available in your top 6.
Yeah.
So that at one point, a lot of these guys are not going to have spots anymore, and you're going to have to fill that bottom 6 with guys that you're going to be essentially have wasted picks, which is not what you want to do. And like you said, they're not trading; they're just continuously drafting at that range and taking the best talent available and trying to work with that. But anyway, I don't know if that's the way to go, but time will tell, right?
Yeah, I just want to add in, like, I don't think Hellenius is a bad pick at all. I think he's a great player. I think he could have easily gone top 10. It's just he doesn't fit this team necessarily. You have Tage and you have Dylan Cousins as your top 2 centers. So where is Hellenius going? This guy's a center, but he's a two-way guy.
But then we just name, and then just all the guys that we just named before, which is about 5 or 6 guys.
Like, I think Savoy plays center too.
Right.
So,
but then at that point, are you going to have a top 9 of just a bunch of skilled guys? Like, that doesn't necessarily always work out either.
No, and I think the problem too is they couldn't really add a defenseman either. They just traded for Byram. So now you got Dahlin, Power, and Byram. Where is this first round defenseman going to play? Like, are you going to go draft maybe an Adam Yurchek and just consider him your 4th D-man? Maybe you're stacked like that, but they're just in such a weird place. I don't know where they go from here. I think it's just, you got to trade for a guy who's NHL ready and start bolstering that roster, because it's not good. You're not competing in the Atlantic with this right now.
At 15, Michael Branson Nygaard to the Detroit Red Wings. 16, Adam Yurchek to the St. Louis Blues. Fast forward a little bit, because I just want to talk about these 2 picks more specifically.
Yep.
20th overall, 1 pick before the Canadiens drafted at 21st. The New York Islanders, the most boring team in hockey potentially, draft the most electric goal scorer in the draft out of the USNDP, Cole Eiserman. Broke tons of records, broke Caulfield's record, knows how to put the puck in the net, doesn't know how to play defense necessarily, But I know, Liam, that you and I were sitting there at the restaurant watching the draft and with our fingers crossed that Cole Eiserman was going to drop to 21 and the Canadiens were going to leave that draft with Demidov and Eiserman, two of the some of the more talented players in this draft. But nonetheless, he goes to the Islanders. What are your thoughts on Cole Eiserman and the fit with the New York Islanders?
I mean, good for Lou. Lou finally bit the bullet and didn't draft a defensive forward. And look, I hope this isn't an Oliver Wahlstrom situation where they draft a great offensive guy and just never play him and he never pans out. So look, if they're able to slot him in, he's not going to play this year, definitely not, and maybe not even next year, but they got to slot him on that top 6 right away once he comes, because that's how he scores goals, when he plays with good players. And I think Barzal and him can absolutely cook for, a good 5 to 8 years, I want to say. So home run pick. I was very disappointed that he didn't drop one more, because I really think the Canadiens would have gotten him.
I think it's a home run pick if they use him properly.
Yeah.
And by use him properly, I mean he's a defensive liability and everyone knows that, and that's the reason that he was sitting there at 20th overall.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, you got to ensure that he's sheltered properly, whether it's through Horvat or Barzal from a defensive standpoint, and get the guy on PP1. Like, let's not pull, like we talked about, let's not pull an Oliver Wahlstrom or a Kiefer Bellows. We're drafting these guys in the first round because of their offensive upside and their goal scoring capabilities, just for them to sit on PP2 and play 12 minutes a night. And
you're playing with Matt Martin. Come on.
Or Cal Clutterbuck. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. So, like, obviously, new coach Patrick was in the building. Like, he clearly likes Barzal and uses him more than the average coach. So let's see that with Eiserman. Obviously, it's not going to be next season, but let's see that when he does make his appearance with the New York Islanders. And finally, this is the last topic of conversation for this episode. Michael Hagg to the Montreal Canadiens at 21st overall. Allegedly, Liam, this was the pick that they wanted to make all along at 21st overall.
Yep.
But he is a 6'1", 190-pound player. So he's definitely a bigger boy.
Yeah.
75 points in 54 games with the Chicago Steel out of the USHL. That's a phenomenal season from he jumped from 10 points in 13 games in his first season with Chicago to 75 in 54. That's an incredible bounce back. He's going to be playing also, if I'm not mistaken, he is committed already to Michigan University.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is like, I'm not just saying this as a Habs fan. I'm not just saying this from a place of bias. I think that was a home run pick, honestly, at 21.
Yeah, the stats, very good, just from looking at them. And this kid is a Habs fan, grew up as a Habs fan. I don't know if everyone was watching the draft. I hope everyone listening to this right now watched the draft or heard this story, because it's very touching that his father passed away a year ago and he didn't look too happy to be drafted, but it's because he wished his dad was there with him, because they were both huge Habs fans growing up. So this kid has got a great character just from how he was speaking. It was just amazing to listen to him. And I think he's going to be a very good player in this system. And it's just very nice to see the Canadiens go out and get another offensive guy.
Yeah, I think it was the right move. They didn't need a defenseman particularly, and I think it made a lot of sense to go out and draft, another center/forward. From people that I've talked to, friends, people that, like Twitter, just, from an outside perspective, it looks like he has, maybe the floor of being a third-line center, but the upside of being a top 6 player.
Yeah.
And I think that that's super exciting. I saw some clips of him, and a lot of people, in terms of his skating stride, were comparing him to Eichel a little bit in terms of the way that he skates with the puck, head up. He has a not necessarily a very fast guy, but uses his stride very, very effectively, which is always nice. And again, the USHL is no joke, so to go significantly over point per game there is very, very impressive. He went 4 points in 2 games in the playoffs as well. So again, obviously these are all surface stats and we can talk about them all day and how it's a smash spot, but it seems like from a lot of, I'll call it sources, that it was a very, very good pick for the Canadiens at 21.
Yeah, and if you don't know a lot about him, he's described here as a two-way playmaker. So adding a guy like that could never hurts.
And also, I would say the two-way playmaker also speaks a lot to what Jack Eichel does in the league. And
yeah.
Again, I'm not going to say that he's going to be, a top 15 player in the league like Jack Eichel is, but I'm just saying that I think that it's interesting to note that his play style kind of mixes it up.
If you're compared to Eichel, you got to have some skill. And just one more shout out, Habs second round pick. Was it second?
Third
round pick. Saku Koivu's son. This kid has a lot of development to go. he has to, continue to work on his weight and all his skills. But very cool pick, to say the least. I don't know if you have any comments about that.
It's awesome. I think
Yeah.
it's Atos Koivu. Very, very cool. And my last thing on this is, I think at that point, you're at the third round. You've drafted, the guys that you went out to get. I mean, realistically speaking, a lot of these players in these third, fourth, fifth, sixth rounds, seventh rounds are not going to, crack an NHL lineup at some point in their career. That's why they're looking to shorten the draft to 4 rounds in the first place, right? So with that being said, I think that, like, why not go out and, yeah, you can call it nepotism all you want, but at the end of the day, he's played in professional Finnish leagues, and he's a solid all-around player. If he doesn't end up playing for the Habs, no one was expecting to, and if he does, it would just be a cool story. So I feel like it's a win-win.
Exactly. I think that's, why not just try? He's got the genes.
There you go. So we'll leave it at that for this episode. It's been fun, obviously. Like, the draft was a lot of fun. Demidov, Michael Haig, some questionable picks by some teams, some smash spot picks by some teams. So obviously a ton of fun. And next episode, we'll be talking about free agency and what has unwinded so far from July 1st to July 2nd. So thank you guys so much for tuning in as per usual, and we'll see you next time. Sorry.